Welcome to the Space in Between podcast, a series where we will talk about everything and anything mental performance in a bite-sized fashion.
My name is Sienna and I'm here with Frida. We are both certified mental performance consultants. I'm from Ireland and Frida is from Sweden. On this podcast, we share our knowledge and passion for all things sport and performance psychology. This includes all things mindset, exercise, sport, everyday life, and insights into how we help ourselves and many, many other people with developing our mindset.
That sums it up pretty well.
So what are we talking about today, Frida? This is actually day 2 of recording this podcast because we recorded the whole thing yesterday and realized we never actually recorded it.
Yeah, double check there. Is it on? Yeah, it is on. Today's topic is about the pitfalls of the go hard or go home mentality.
Interesting.
So with this topic, the reason why we thought about it is because I was out running. I was running an easy run, and I was thinking about how difficult it felt to run this easy run because I was running easy. And, kind of that idea of, we should always be pushing and working hard, etc., etc. And that made me think during that run, okay, interesting, why am I thinking these things right now? And what does that say? And then I talked to you about it, and then we went on a completely different tangent, and you'll hear about it all now that we go through all the 5 things that we're going to talk about. But we definitely took it a step further than go easy when it's time to go easy and go hard when you go hard kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I also think running is a good place to see that mentality unfold, because I think about when I started running more and it kind of felt like, every run should be hard. Like, what's the point in spending this time working out or running if it's gonna be easy, And that is a mindset that we unfortunately take into all aspects of life, really.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of where that go hard or go home mentality comes in. It's something that we might say, offhandedly, or just, throw it out there. Maybe some people actually really believe it strongly as well. But the underlying issues, I guess, with that type of talk and mindset is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. And before we get into that, I think it's important to say we obviously know that there is, to achieve anything, you do need to work hard.
Yeah.
You do need to be committed. You do need to be disciplined. There's days when you're tired and you need to work out or practice or whatever it is. It's not like we're saying, bit tired now, don't push it. But it's about when that's too much, when that's always the mindset, why that can be problematic.
Yeah, and we'll definitely touch on those things as we go through the 5 different points we're going to talk about today. And that's a really good point that you're making there, Sienna. So thank you for bringing that up. So one of the first pitfalls that we're going to talk about is how that mentality can lead to short-term success, but also long-term decline. And I suppose it's one of those things that, if we think short-term, maybe a week, 2 weeks, etc., and maybe even a little bit longer, if I am, let's talk about training now, training really hard, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to help me improve, I'm going to get better, so I'm going to work hard the next 2 weeks to push. We might see that, okay, there's some improvement here. But then when we go over a certain time period, we won't be able to maintain that intensity, that effort, especially if we think about a whole season or a career. So that's when you will see that decline in effort and performance, etc., because that intensity is too high to maintain.
Yeah, and I think because of the short-term success, that can lure you into this false sense of this is the right thing to do all the time, because you see improvements, across different areas because you've been pushing hard. So then maybe it feels like this is what I need to do all the time to keep improving.
Yeah.
But then in the long term, that mindset and maybe the behaviors that come with that actually can move us further away from where we want to be.
What we see on social media can sometimes be a reflection of this is what it should be like. So these people are working so hard, they're putting in all this effort, they're doing X, Y, and Z, so that's also what I should do. But what's important to remember is that we don't know what's going on in someone's life or how they are, their whole week is looking. But there is this mentality of you gotta hustle and you gotta work hard all the time. If you're not waking up at 4 a.m. doing all of the things that you're gonna do to become the best version of yourself, then you're failing.
Yeah.
Like social media has a little bit of that idea, you know, or that we might see that view a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, those morning routines have been going around.
Yeah, that's true. For a long time, though.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things to remember as well with social media, that, you know, we might have this perception of, okay, this is what we got to do to succeed. But what's really important to remember is that the best of the best, they know when to rest and they know when to work hard. And there's not always there's not always time to work hard.
Yeah.
Rest is just as important as doing all those things, both for your body and for your mind.
Yeah. And I even think, like, to the extent that it's not always about getting better or getting fitter or getting stronger. Like, it's about, at some points in your season, like, you're maintaining and then you're trying to peak. And, you know, so if we do think, oh, I should always be improving, maybe we do get sucked into always pushing as hard as we possibly can.
And like we said, that is not possible to maintain for a longer period of time.
So let's say we do try to maintain that for a longer period of time, too long, if you will. What can come from that?
I mean, there's many different things. But one thing that you will notice is that we talked about already, that it's really hard to maintain that intensity. And with time, that motivation that you had to push hard, it will decline.
Yeah.
So your intrinsic motivation, this is another of the pitfalls of the go hard or go home mentality, is that your motivation will decline.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to maintain that, like, mental focus on this individual thing for an extended period of time. And that definitely, you know, you can think about it even, you know, if someone starts on a get fit journey, the motivation is super high at the start, and it might be like, oh yeah, I'm going to work out every day and I'm just going to make this progress, do this thing. But then, you know, if we take on too much or push too hard, then after like a couple of weeks, it's like, well, actually, I can't maintain this effort. And that motivation now is suddenly in the floor, and we're struggling to take any action at all, potentially.
Yeah, and if we take that a step further, it actually ties perfectly into our next pitfall that we're going to talk about. And it's about how we can negatively impact our mental health. And, you know, constantly going for that grind and go hard, go home mentality eventually will have an impact. You know, you might feel more anxious, or we might kind of have this idea that I am not doing enough. Regardless of what I'm doing, the effort I'm putting in, it's not enough. I have to do more. And that can lead into, like, you know, like I said, anxiety, depression, etc. And also a probably negative image of your effort.
Yeah. And I mean, I even think, like, if we go off the second pitfall, which was lower motivation, if we're consistently feeling like, you know, there's something that we've set out to do, but I actually don't have the motivation to do it, then that alone is going to have a negative impact on our mental health as an athlete, for example. Because it's like, why don't I have this motivation to do this thing? You know?
Yeah.
And we might start to question, like, how committed we are to what we're doing, or if this is actually what we really want. And, you know, that can be difficult as an athlete when you do have goals that maybe in this moment feel really difficult to pursue.
Yeah, I actually really like that you brought that in there, because when we think about it with the mental health right here and the feeling of not doing enough, and then we had commitment, discipline, you know, all of those things that we are disciplined to do X, Y, and Z. And when we feel like, why am I not? I don't want to anymore. So then we might start to think, I am not a committed athlete, or I am not a disciplined athlete. And looking on social media, I see all of these people doing all of these things. Why can't I do that? Why can't I maintain this same effort? So it really can have a harmful impact there on, you know, your self-image.
And obviously on here we focus a lot on the mental side of things, but there's also physiological pitfalls that can come with this go hard or go home mentality, which is pretty obvious when you think about it.
Yeah.
But that brings us to our fourth pitfall here, and that is the increased potential of injury due to overtraining. And with the overtraining, not even necessarily the number or the frequency of training, but the intensity of training. So, you know, we're going to have an increased risk of injury if we're constantly trying to train in, zone 5 or 10 out of 10 effort because we believe, well, I need to go max effort on every single thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, and it's having that max effort and then neglecting the recovery.
Yeah.
So that we're not, because I mean, someone could train hard, obviously in periods, and still recover really well because they're prioritizing that recovery. But it is when that is lacking, so the recovery is lacking, and we're pushing hard all the time. And all of these things that we've talked about, they come together, right? So this is just another facet of, not recovering. And taking a step back and seeing that, we need to take things in phases, and it's not always time to push hard. And something that happens in the body too, and I think both psychologically and physiologically, we think about cortisol, the stress hormone that gets released when we're working hard, or, when we're stressed for whatever reason. And that impacts your mentality, and also it impacts you physically in many different ways, right? So that's why it is so important to take that time to recover, not only physiologically, but also psychologically.
Yeah. And obviously we need some levels of stress, if you will, to perform and to be able to execute things. But if the body and mind is constantly under high stress, that's when it's unhelpful, and it's going to have an unhelpful impact on pretty much anything to do with your performance. Even think muscle growth, or getting faster, or being able to execute skills, being able to think in a pressure situation. That's going to be a lot harder if you are mentally and physically fatigued because you're constantly under this stress.
Yeah. And what's so interesting with this too is that to improve, right, we have to put the body under stress. The same way that we have to mentally challenge ourselves and stress the body. So that is a part of becoming better, stronger, fitter, handling stress, or being confident in these different scenarios, etc. So there's that's what we do to the body and mind, we stress it. So the issue is that we're talking about now is when we're not letting that body and mind recover afterwards. And that is, if we look at exercise physiology, just at the body, that is how how important it is, so we put the body under stress, and then we recover, and then we put the body under a little bit more stress, and over time we get stronger, fitter, faster, etc. But if we don't allow ourselves to have that recovery period, your performance declines. And then it goes to all those things that you mentioned mentally as well, now I'm not able to focus as well, or maybe I feel weak, I feel strong, because we're actually breaking the body down, both physically and mentally. So that's why recovery is so important. And it goes back to what we said at the start, that, the best of the best, they know that.
Yeah.
And they know how important recovery is to their performance. And like you said, there are times that we want to peak for. We're not peaking all the time. And even with that said, I think about certain sports and environments, you might not even have to think about that as much as an athlete, because that's taken care of for you. We're in an environment where everything is structured, your training, your recovery, etc. And then, of course, what you do outside of those hours as well have an impact. But I think about handball, for example, and how not a lot of people have, their coaches that they can lean on, or maybe know how to structure their training. And that will, of course, have an impact as well. So maybe my idea or my mentality is well, I have to work hard all the time. I have to play 5 handball games before this tournament in a week, or I am not gonna perform. And then people come around and say, oh, I actually didn't perform that well because I was so tired, for example.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah, but I do know a great coach that you can work with if you...
You're talking about me, right?
Yeah. A little bit of a tangent there.
And now we'll go into an ad.
No, but definitely, if you're in that environment, of course, it all comes down to, individually, what are you doing as well, and what's the structure and environment around you. But these are things to definitely consider, and think about.
Yeah.
And I guess, the last thing we're going to talk about, so all of the things we have mentioned can eventually lead to a risk of burnout. So athlete burnout. So if we take it all the way to the end, where now we have reached that tipping point of we have pushed too hard for too long, we're not recovering, we might be diagnosed with athlete burnout. And the only way to come back for burnout is to decrease your intensity and to stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think this is a word that's thrown around a lot in sport and in many performance areas. Oh, like I'm just burnt out, or, you know, like, but the thing with burnout is, like, you know, if you take a week off and you suddenly are filled with energy and you're able to go at it again, like, you weren't burnt out.
Yeah.
You know, like you just said, we need to like drastically decrease what we're doing. And that could potentially be for months that we have to pull it back, because burnout is something that you can't just take a rest day and everything is better. You know, it requires a long, probably difficult adaptation to your current approach.
Yeah. And it kind of ties everything together that we have talked about. You know, we have that, you know, we're tired, fatigued, loss of performance, and motivation is in rock bottom. And for some people, it might even mean that whatever I'm doing right now, I don't want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because you lose the love and, you know, the drive for the sport, if that's what we're talking about here, that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the only way to come out of burnout is to stop doing what you're doing entirely. And that doesn't mean forever, but like for a period of time, just step away from it and focus on other things.
And you might sit there and think, wow, we're talking about go hard or go home mentality, and now we went all the way to athlete burnout. So kind of like what I said at the start, we really dragged it out to, you know, what could be, you know, 5 of these pitfalls in the, I guess in the worst way, the way it could be internalized over time, and then eventually all of these impacts. But that's why it's so important too to think about, well, what are we saying? What are we talking about? How do we talk to our children about these things, or our teammates, our friends? And, you know, having that awareness of all of these things, especially when there's so much circulating out there. Obviously, there's a lot of good content as well, talking about, you know, rest recovery and, you know, how to train and all those things. But there's also so much out there that is not very helpful.
No. And I think the most difficult thing with the go hard or go home mentality is that it's like glorified.
Yeah.
Like it's often, you know, masked as being disciplined, committed, and, you know, striving towards your goals. And because of that, maybe we don't see in ourselves the signs that, oh, maybe I'm like towing on the edge of this being actually really unhelpful to my performance.
Yeah, and potentially even harmful to you. And like you said, we might not even be aware because we're so in that mindset.
Yeah. But this is something that you can work with a mental performance consultant on.
Wow.
Yeah. And I know 2 really good ones. But seriously, this isn't something that we actually talk about a lot, and we should talk about it more. Like, we do work one-to-one with performers, athletes, and we work with teams. And, you know, these are difficult conversations or topics that we have with athletes every week. Like, you know, how much are we doing? Could we do less of things? What's helpful? What's unhelpful? Are we towing on the edge of burnout? Have we already got there, you know, and how can we work around that? So if you or someone close to you relates very deeply to any of this, you know, you can reach out to us.
And with all of that said, we hope that you found this podcast episode helpful. Please share it with a friend. And as always, remember to keep using the space in between.